You could say Mary Magdalene is the throbbing, rhythmic pulse of wisdom. And Yeshua, Jesus, is the living word, the kind of words that just take your breath away, land squarely in the very center of your heart, and cause you to cry because you have just met and received truth.
Aletheia Sophia, finally, I've got you on the show. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. Welcome to Passion Harvest.
Thank you so much for being here and a nice, strong connection.
Yes, we've tried a few times, but this is perfect today. It's meant to be. For
Yes.
those of the audience that haven't heard about you or know about you, would you mind just sharing a little bit briefly about your background and how you came to be here today?
I have written 9 books, I believe, mostly on sacred union, sacred relationships, womb wellness, that kind of thing. That was my first emergence. And that developed and deepened, and perhaps you could say I became more mystical in my curiosity. And in comes the Holy Sophia and mystical Christianity. And then to just finish it all off, then I came to where I am now, which is in the French Pyrenees, which has completely captivated me in every possible way. This corner is renowned for its association with Mary Magdalene and her 12 disciples. Centuries later, we get to hear the word Catharism, which is again another Gnostic form of Christianity, the descendants of Mary Magdalene here in France. So I'm in my happy place. This is it. This is home in every possible way. And of course, we got 25 goats.
Yes, we spoke about that. I love goats. You are, I don't know what you do, but you are absolutely glowing. Like you've got a beautiful glow around you. So to start with, Mary Magdalene. Well, I'm assuming most people would have heard of her, but who was she? And I know there's Mary Magdalene trails in parts of France, and people come and do all sorts of things. So do you mind just sharing some of your knowledge about this?
I'll just do a little tidbit. Well, Mary Magdalene is hugely associated with France, and most folks know if they want to come to know her in a correct way, they would come to France because this place is laden with her shrines, with her altars, with her baptismal pools, caves, and forests. Absolutely, you're falling over them. They're absolutely everywhere. So to me, Mary Magdalene started off, even as a little girl, I sensed she was like the girlfriend of Jesus Christ. Later, that word would have changed into something like the beloved. But as I said, going on this mystical, more Gnostic journey, that went to a third level, which was she could have been inspiring him profoundly to be and say what he was and said. You could say Mary Magdalene is the throbbing, rhythmic pulse of wisdom. And Yeshua, Jesus, is the living word, the kind of words that just take your breath away, land squarely in the very center of your heart, and cause you to cry because you have just met and received truth. And yes, that's where I am right now in this here now moment, imagining that they birthed this way of living together.
So thank you. So Mary Magdalene was let's call her the partner of what we know as Jesus Christ. How did she get to France?
Well, she had to escape quite swiftly from the Holy Land because after him, it would have been her,
Right.
hunted and tracked down by
The
both
Romans.
the Romans and the Sanhedrin. So even the high Jewish priest kings were also not favorable of this new message that was severely threatening their power status. So they were, hunted by two opposing forces. So Mary Magdalene, so the tales of Provence, which is a region in France, tell us Mary Magdalene, her brother Lazarus, her sister Martha, and a handful of others turned up on the shore of Sainte Marie de la Mer, which is in the Camargue region of southern France, and came ashore and was swiftly taken under by the Romany gypsies on the coastline. Took them into shelter because that area is still very Roman. France was the second largest Roman state, so she hadn't really at this point escaped to safety. But she'd escaped to a land and a people that would have been spectacularly open to hear her message, especially the further towards the Pyrenees that she goes, into what we might now call Catalonia or the Occitan region of France.
And so in France, she had, I might not be using the right terminology, followers, disciples, and spread the message of Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. I believe the whole thing that we saw unfold in the Holy Land began again, like a chapter 2, but now in France, which would have been called Gaul, and now with a Mary Magdalene very able to speak the message herself. Because in the Holy Land, because of the status between men and women, there's just no way she could have dared stand up as a woman and speak such truth to the people. But here in France, this was already happening anyway. That kind of influence hadn't reached France. And it never really did reach France, actually. Centuries later, again with the Cathar tradition, there were so many outspoken, direct transmitters of truth from the realms of woman. So France has always held a sanctuary for, outspoken women speaking on behalf of the divine.
Wonderful. So moving on to the Cathars, for those that don't know, and I only know a little bit, but I'm fascinated by it as well, and there's a wealth of information in France. Who are they? What are they? Where did they go? What was their mission? And that's so many questions. I'll pass it over to you.
Well, the Cathars were about 800 years ago. You could call them Gnostics. You could call them followers of an early Christian path. You could call them the spiritual descendants of Mary Magdalene, which is what I do. They were a very pure, very gentle, lightly stepping upon the earth tradition of people, men and women, who both held positions in their healing, in their sermons, in their teaching. They never had churches. The churches were the forests or the springs, and they were called churches of love. They were just natural environments. There was no building ever. This way of life spread like wildfire in this region of France, began to actually run parallel with the Roman Catholic Church in its popularity, in its attendance, and in its message. And for a while, this was okay. But the more that this tradition crept up in a sort of shoulder to shoulder, sense of there is a parallel Christian tradition forming. And there was even a time when a Cathar bishop, his name was put in a hat to possibly become the Pope in Rome. Whether he would have taken such a position is open to question, but that's just how popular this was. This wasn't just like a little grassroots thing. This was spreading across Europe. And at a certain point, the pressure from the rest of France built up in the Vatican City to such a degree where the Pope had to make a move. It was becoming a threat. A lot of popularity was continuing to gain momentum. Perhaps the realization that, oh my God, this is coming from that woman, Mary Magdalene. We never did quite manage to extinguish her message or, change her character in the Bible, her reputation. Despite all our greatest efforts, she still flourishes. And so, together with the King of France, the Pope ordered a crusade. First time ever that he has turned European man upon European man. Usually the crusades went towards the Holy Land. To absolutely eradicate and not make martyrs of this Christian way of life. And for about 20 years, there was a crusade. There was a 10-year reign of peace, not really, just less crusading. But then a second wave came. So the Pope called for another army to be formed, to come at this region again, different angle, different tactics. Now we got the Inquisition, to simply just absolutely get rid of the people, get rid of the books, get rid of the teachings, get rid of the law. I don't want nothing left. Now, why on earth would that happen? So much time, so many lives lost, so much money spent, so much devastation to a European country and its architecture, its arts, its way of traditions. Is it really because it was Mary Magdalene?
So the Cathars were eliminated for the most part.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, man can be very cruel, can't they?
Yes. Perhaps, a handful escaped over the Pyrenees, went down into Spain very, very lightly. And of course, whispers and teachings and sharings, little oral tradition started again, because look at where we are now. We're talking about it right now. I know from living here, there is a great movement and renaissance. So it may have
and we're talking
quiet.
about it without fear.
Absolutely. It may
is
have gone quiet, but it certainly didn't go silent.
Yes, there are some good things about this internet and modern day, pros and cons. You spoke about the descendants of Mary Magdalene.
Yes, I believe that I utterly believe she had a daughter, Sarah, who
With
went to
Christ?
Iona. Yes.
Oh,
Yes, this would have been quite normal.
of course, but it's just not.
Yeah, yes, mainstream religion. It's like, what? I believe she had a girl, at least, Sarah, who married a high-level druid priest king from Glastonbury, a perfect and matrimonial match. So love was there. This was not about status. This was not about power. This was not about bringing two families together, which would have been the normal reasons for getting married back in those days. But there would have been an absolute love and friendship there. I believe Sarah went up to Iona, little island just off Scotland, where once again the whole thing started again. Just her being there and communing with that island, the right place at the right time and the right person, suddenly others are drawn to Iona. And lo and behold, they become another group of 12. And from her, perhaps, as it is suggested, royal seats of Europe were occupied from that bloodline. There's also a heavy suggestion that Mary Magdalene and Jesus also had two boys, but that is not something I have actively researched, so I wouldn't really know at all. But Sarah, yes, I've spent a lot of time trying to piece together her journey.
just asking for the audience, they'll probably ask, well, where do you get this information from? Where have you done your research?
Gosh, it would be medieval chronicles, books, Inquisition notes, which the Inquisitors absolutely wrote everything down and is stored in Carcassonne, the city not too far from here. Local stories, fellow researchers, documentaries. But then, because it's a flavor, it's a path, it's a flavor, and once you
A
fill,
passion.
yeah, and once you fill your inner world with it, you start to sort of sniff out your own understandings. That is a little pinch of both logic and imagination. It feels right. So going to these places, so I've been to Iona, I've absolutely gone up and down this country, which is France, spending time in places associated with them, like spending the night, spending days, spending weeks, in that cave, on that shoreline. Sarah, it is said, began the first monastery in Iona. And of course, regular history will say, oh no, that was St. Columba. He started his monastery. Yes, I know, there's two there. Did you not notice? There's one which is obviously St. Columba's monastery for his monks, early Irish Catholic saint. But if you go over there, you'll see ruins far older. And there is a flagstone from the abbotess at that time, leaving behind a huge hint engraved in stone. And the words I cannot recall word for word, but most definitely speaking of Sarah and Mary Magdalene. You see what I mean? You have to go outside of the mainstream history.
And it almost feels to me, which is far more intelligent, that you're tapping into universal consciousness and your own intuition and your own guidance. And of course, from what I hear, your deep connection with the land, which is absolutely wonderful. Why, maybe it's an obvious question, why do you think that the church lied to us or wanted to control the masses to such an extent?
There's so many levels that question can be answered. We could start at a really simple one. Perhaps, pilgrims bring a lot of revenue to the churches, to the basilicas, to the places where there are holy relics. And they will do and spend almost anything to have a prayer said for them, have a mass said for them, to be able to handle the relics. So a lot of very wealthy people were coming to the churches to be in the presence of those wondrous things and spending very good money in order to do so. Whereas with something like the Cathars, no money required. Absolutely not. Another answer would be to equip us with a moral compass, because apparently we're so stupid that we have to have this terrible threat of we were born sinful, and if we carry on being sinful, then we're going to head straight towards hell and encounter the devil face to face. And so this apparently keeps us all with a little moral compass in our back pocket. Behaving ourselves kind of thing. Another more esoteric answer would be, yes, of course, there are indeed forces in existence designed to swerve us from stepping into our divine birthright of realizing our evolving divinity. So it's not even like, oh, I'm divine. Oh, I'm divine and I'm evolving. Holy smokes. And that, again, is what the Cathars were up to. They, and all other Gnostics, they gave us a direct application to be able to have our one-on-one communion whenever our heart was open and we were humble. So that, to a controlling power structure, that's very frightening. That the masses have that ability to be, to be heretical. The word heretic means to choose. For us to have access to our clear and lucid mind, which again I find is this time. This is what's arising, this ability to have access to know. And of course, we're getting things thrown at us left, right, and center to come back to that fear and threatening model.
Yes.
If you don't do this, this will happen.
You have such, you're just, as I said, you were glowing. You have such an incredible passion for your life. You're following your passions. You're so connected to the universe, consciousness, and the land, which is so incredibly powerful. For those of the audience that perhaps haven't remembered that, or have lost that spark, or can't find their passion, whatever it may be, it might not be the same as yours. But what's your advice for those that are looking for that?
I always say, mostly it's women who come my way. I don't work only with women. I don't know where anyone got that idea from, but it's mostly the ladies who come. And one of my first questions is, do you still have a sense of longing? Because us ladies, by golly, we are a power keg of creativity, passion, longing, outrageousness, aliveness, pioneering spirit. But of course, this patriarchal way of life is trying to squash that or channel it in its favor. And when a woman is going against the grain, her levels will decline, and she might turn up looking grey, washed out, weary, and spent. And that's when we get to work, because I believe completely, and thankfully have been proven right so many times, that even when she's in that terrible, terrible state, she can reawaken. If she goes on a archaeological dig in her own self, where is my passion? Where did I put it? And again, it's a lot of work, digging, rooting around, finding the drive to do that, to be willing to respond when you find it, because there's going to be some big emotions down there. And then a reorganization of priorities. So it's kind of like the heroine's journey. She's gone down to find her deepest self, laid buried on top of layers upon layers of reasons why to remain silent, or to be small, or to feel unworthy, or to feel too much, or to feel too little. And then comes the ascension, where that little list of priorities shifts drastically. And then there's a loyalty and a commitment to adhere to that, and to ascend and rise back up into, not really your life because it's changed, into a life now that you inhabit for many, many great reasons. And that process includes the body, the psychology, spirit, the heart, sexuality, absolutely everything. You're saving yourself.
Yes, I felt all of those things and probably experienced all of those things as well.
Yeah. And as terrible as this time is, it also brings this profound sense of urgency. So we're more willing now to do it,
Mm.
to actually draw that line in the sand and say, no more can I live like this. No more. No more. Okay, I got to go on my journey. I know there's going to be a descending. I'm going to go down into the underworld where I'm going to find parts of myself in a terrible condition, seemingly. But the very nature of the journey was to call you to this place anyway. So even when you look at the reasons why you descended, they're also reasons to get you here.
Yes. And in this
You see
day
what
and
I mean? It's
age,
like a little trick.
women are allowed to do this.
Women are designed to do this. This is one of my little sacred frustrations because this is what we're made of. We are a kaleidoscope of life, from the most tragic to the most joyful. And when you have your deep sense of self, you don't really favor either way. You're available for it all with like a thirst and a hunger because you've got your deep sense of self. You know, you got something glorious to hold on to. So if you're having a moment of tragedy, you're not going to collapse. And if you're having a moment of ecstasy, you're not going to swiftly go into chaos afterwards because you got yourself. You've got yourself. I believe women are designed for this journey. Women are designed to be a sanctuary to all life, including her own. She can be fierce. She can be tender. She can be hilarious. She can be sober.
Beautiful. You're so inspiring. Where is the best place for people to connect with you? And I will leave a link below in the show notes as well.
You could come to the website, which is, oh, it's a big long one. Aletheia Sophia. You better go to that link.
I'll put the link in the notes.
These three names are not really names, but words. So Aletheia is the Greek word for truth. Pistis is the Greek word for faith. And Sophia is the Greek word for wisdom. And no, I'm not Greek. But I do like that time. I do like that era of, you know, Socrates and Plato and all of that business. If you want to come and do some of this work.
Yes, I was just about to say you do
Right.
hold retreats in France.
Yes, yeah, we have an amazing place. This just came our way right at the start of lockdown, right at the start of COVID. We just splurged and decided to buy this property in the mountains, and that's called Les Contes. Again, link. Les Contes means the tales, the stories, so that's handy because I'm a storyteller. And yeah, we can get to work.
Thank you. Yes, for everyone that's listening or watching, I will put links. A couple more questions, if that's okay.
Definitely.
You've spoken about, or you've written about Christ's early teachings and the importance and powerfulness of these teachings. What are they?
Oh gosh. To me, they are a transmission of the most pristine, ever relevant, ever alive, legendary sense of love. Just to think about it, just makes me go there. And centuries later, you know, by the time that he and her, or we can just say he, was, you know, it shows up in the New Testament, and it's kind of, it's changed. It's become a little rigid. It's become a little dogmatic. And that threatening presence has shown up again. So I have been to church. My father was an Irish Catholic. I didn't go very often, wasn't really into the masses, but I was utterly moved to tears with the art and the statues. And because I wasn't a practicing Catholic, because I wasn't a Catholic, I wasn't allowed to have the Eucharist, the communion, the wafer. But there was one time when I did. And yes, that was beautiful. Most of the time, my father would send me to the priest where I'd kneel and the sign of the cross would be done above my head and he would tap my head. And yes, I still got that sense of the Holy Spirit. So I knew there was definitely a sense of goodness in the church. And I could also see it in a few of the followers and the priests and the nuns and the sisters. I could see their sincerity. But mostly it was a scary place to go. And it, again, that drumming, trying to drum into us this devilish presence and this hell and, the terrible things that could happen to you if you continue to sin. So I wasn't really drawn to that. But there's no mistaking those early, maybe not teachings, maybe just remembrances. I can imagine just to see him, even if you can't understand what he's saying, it's coming your way anyway. So that is, for some strange reason, don't ask me why, that is very alive with me. One of the things that touches me the most comes from the disciple John, who was the last one. He lived to be an old man, and his deepest prayer was, for God's sake, please release me from this body. I just want to be with you. Why am I the last one? Oh my God, I seem to be living on forever and ever, and I just want to come to heaven. And in his mystical states, he was able to see the throne of God. And what was sat there was a little white, fluffy, backlit golden lamb. And to me, being a shepherdess of goats, I'm just like, well, yeah, of course, it's the lamb. If you ever...
The innocent.
Totally. I mean, we have goats. They're not quite lambs, but even goats are like, when you see them, oh my God, I was cutting their feet today, hence having strange coloured hands, cutting their hooves. The look in
Which
their
doesn't
eyes,
hurt them, for those that have no idea.
No.
They were getting foot rot or something from the weather, if you mentioned.
Yes, with
rain.
little goatees, you have to trim their hooves to keep their feet nice and flat. Otherwise, it's like they're wearing high heels. They kind of twist and fall over. So, yeah. And just to see their little faces and the look in their eye and their eyelashes. So, I'm going into ecstasy over baby goats. Can you imagine what a little white lamb is like to handle? And it gives you a little bleat.
And it brings you so much joy and it radiates out. So would you say the difference between perhaps Christ's earlier teachings and the Testaments is that the earlier teachings didn't have fear in them?
I would say the earlier teachings were glorious.
Without fear?
Yeah, no fear.
No hell, no.
No, none of that business. But definitely an aspiration, calling on that as aspiring, longing, passion in us to become more, perhaps, good, more beautiful, more compassionate, more kind, more loving. Not because, there's a devil about to bite your butt, but because, human nature can degrade without having some kind of spiritual evolution within them happening. So it's kind of like To be spiritual is to balance, is to bring some balance to the world within you and without you, because without it, oh, we start to
Unbalance.
what's the word? Unbalance, yeah, degrade or diminish. Yeah, that was my contemplation this morning.
Interesting. So, I mean,
That
what do you think it's all about? What, in your opinion, what is the purpose of our human incarnation? Why are we here?
I always get that word, to balance.
To balance.
To balance. It's so simple, and truth often is outrageously simple. You're like, that can't be true, it's too simple. Ah, it probably is. Maybe we are just part of creation, and our job is to balance, keep things in balance, in harmony. If you've been given a life, everybody, or life, has the right to thrive. Their habitat has the right to thrive. Their food source has the right to thrive. Their children, their offspring have the right to thrive. If you're in a body of some kind, feathered, scaled, or fleshy, you have the right to thrive. You have the right to live. And maybe because of our consciousness, we can look around and see where that life needs a little assistance. Because, thriving is not happening over there. I could bring some balance to that situation. Only balance. The problem is we've got into what's right and what's wrong. That's good, that's bad. But if we could say, I just need some balance.
I love that, and it's very, very simple. Thank you. Do you have any profound, or you probably have many mystical experiences that you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, blimey. I think that my whole life is one big mystical experience. Where we are now at the moment with this house, LeConte, it seems so much. It seems like we have been given so much. I don't know who by, but that's the words I use. What comes with it is a huge amount of responsibility. But I'm like, why? How? Not only do we have this huge house, we have this huge source of water, like ginormous. I'm in the process of creating water temples. Have a chapel, like what? And now this part with the goats, 25 amazing, loving, friendly, intelligent goats that make us walk around the forest, which keeps us outside rather than on the computer. So that whole thing is just a mystical experience.
I love that, yes. And I love it, the divine timing, how everything falls into place.
Yes. Now, if I didn't have this, I would be a hermit somewhere. Definitely. I know myself.
I have a tendency to be a hermit.
I would have a little cabin somewhere, more remote, and probably just be writing by hand somewhere with an open fire, which would have filled me with a lot of personal joy and comfortability. So I would have been happy, no problem. This huge, generous gift is making me open up to not even the idea, because it's already happening, open me up to what is happening, and that is like a mystery school. And yes, there will be others here. And yes, you won't have your cozy cottage handwriting in your books. you're being called to task and, to just continue having this conversation with people in person.
And I love you just following the calling of the universe and the guidance and intuition. It's almost, as you said, the balance. It's that easy. People often ask, how can I connect with my intuition, or what is my soul purpose? You probably answered it, but what's your advice for that?
You have to find what bothers and hurts you and animates you the most. What really, what is it you can't ignore? When it's happening, you can't ignore it. For me, it would have been animals. So any form of cruelty, any form of, barbaric factory farming conditions. They are, every time, pop. It's like striking a match and putting it on a bonfire. Every time I came into any contact of a possibility of an animal being harmed, I would go up in flames. That was something I couldn't balance. And now I can see, no, you weren't meant to balance it. Your balancing action is to open up, a third of the house for refugees coming in from the factory farms. Because that's what we do. We try and save as many as possible, or at least catch the ones going out because they're no good anymore and they just need to be slaughtered. Rubbish! They've got years of good life in them.
So is it just goats? Sorry to interrupt. Is it?
No, it's any factory animal, or any animal in general that has been abused, neglected, thrown away in some way. But mostly, I want to save as many as I can from the factory farms. Just divert them this direction.
Well, it's a beautiful mission and a lot of work and expense, I guess, to house all these animals.
And broken heart every time. When they first arrive, there's my spiritual work right there. There's the threshold. Oh, it's heart opening and it's heart smashing. And to find the balance.
But incredibly rewarding as well.
Definitely. Oh my gosh, I can just sit there and, tears are just coming down the eyes as I just look across and I see everybody. Like today, I was having a moment because usually little offspring born in a factory farm, they would have maybe 3 weeks with their mother and then off they go. And I won't say where they might go, but they will be separated from their mother. Fact. So here we have our little babies. They're now 3 months old. And the mother and the baby is still choosing each other. So, they're all tucked up together, resting on one another, completely cozy. That just would not be happening in the factory farms. So I looked across at them today and went, oh my God, look at eyes. She's resting on her boy's back and he was resting on her belly. That's mother and son.
It's lovely. And you mentioned you take them for walks in the forest, and when they come when you call them, 25 goats following you in the forest.
Yes, quite a mission.
What do the neighbors think?
It's kind of like, oh, novel, probably something along the lines of, oh my God, there goes those English people with their goats. They have goats in fields. You just open the barn, they go out to graze, you bring them back in at night. So our little goaties, oh gosh, just amazing. We go to the forest, we pet them, we love them, we stroke them, we scratch them, we kiss them, we sing to them. Oh yes, we sing to them. We sit together, we lay together, we sunbathe together, and then we come home at the end of the day. That's probably why I'm glowing.
Well, I guess it just came to me. I wonder who's healing who. You're healing the goats, or the goats healing you?
Exactly. And I also have a little bit of a suspicion because of this affinity I have with Christ and Christianity. Before Jesus showed up, goats were an offering. Because I've asked myself this question over and over again. What on earth is this huge love I have for goats? Where does this come from? And this is what comes up. Early days, maybe not so much of the Christian times, but just before that, goats were a sacrifice to the gods. And that is what I'm repairing. I know it because it cuts to the quick every time I think about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've got one question I keep thinking about. When you spoke about the Inquisitors, I asked you, where did you do your research? The
Yes.
Inquisitors, you said you were saying you read the books. What language did they write in?
They wrote in the local language, so
Oh, okay. Not
Occitan.
Latin or, okay.
No, I'm sure there probably are
Okay.
Latin documents, but luckily this here in Carcassonne is in Occitan, which is very, very closely related to French. And of course, Google Translate comes in very handy.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
still
the
around today.
Inquisition
It's
was
still around
everywhere.
today, the Occitan.
Oh yes, yes,
It sounds similar for those of interested. It's just like a very country accent, a very strong accent.
yes. Slightly different words, definitely different dialect. Yeah, the people who live here are very proud. They don't even classify themselves as French. It's like the Catalonians. They don't want to be called Spanish.
Mm.
No. And same
Mm.
with the Basque Country, another little area, the other side of the Pyrenees. Yeah, no, we're Basque. We are not French.
Lovely. I've loved having you on the show. On a final note, is there anything that you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest audience that I haven't asked you today, Aletheia?
Hmm. Hmm. No, I don't think so. I think we've covered some very good ground.
We have.
Yeah, and there's lots to mull over, you know. Hopefully there was a few things that jumped out for folks. Well, if you just go back and just mull it over, you'll get a bit more out of it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest.
Yay, thank you. Thank you.
It's
Very
my
good.
pleasure. No, I really loved it, loved it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well, I hope I get to see you in the
Yes,
garden one
we're
day.
kind of close.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you. Goodbye.